welcome to our panel. It is called Beyond the Pitch, Football's Role in Driving Sustainability and Social Impact. So hopefully that's what you've come for. We've got a great session here. I am Susie Tomson. I'm Senior Partner at ThinkBeyond. We're a sustainability and social impact consultancy. We work largely in and through sport and using sport as that platform for positive change. Now, World Football Summit, we've got lots of conversations, lots around tech. There's been some around sustainability. I know we've got some more tomorrow as well. And often we get a bit of pushback. It's not really football's purpose, is it? It's not really core to football. So, you know, is it going to help us win? Is it going to get more people out there playing? But the reality is, you know, football's no longer just about what we see on the pitch. The world's changing. It's changing in an unprecedented way. Physical impacts are being real in sport. A lot of different sports, depends on where you are across the globe as well. And fan expectation is changing as well, and how we engage fans and how we answer their needs and things is changing. So many of the most forward-thinking clubs and leagues have recognised and are addressing this, and there's, you know, the challenges are essential and urgent. It's not just important to them, and we're certainly seeing a shift. I've been involved in sport and sustainability for many years now, and we're certainly seeing that tipping point. And today, we're going to dive into why leading organisations have chosen to take a position in this space, whether that's commercial opportunities, legislative pressures, or fan engagement, and a myriad of other reasons in there, the challenges, benefits, solutions. So I've personally been privileged to work with three of these people, and very nice to meet Rafael. So we have on our panel, and we'll hear from them, we have Ruaidhri Dunn, Head of Procurement, I should do it in the right order, shouldn't I? Paul, Vice President of Stadium Operations at Liverpool Football Club in the UK. We've got Ruaidhri Dunn, who is Head of Procurement and Sustainability at the Football Association in the UK as well. Will Hutton, Premier League Head of Sustainability there, so be great to hear from him. And Rafael, Permuy, co-founder and CEO of Bosquia. So I'm going to start with Ru. I'm going to start with you. Governing body of English football, you also manage the elite, the England team, grassroots community game, massive growth in girls and women's football, and we've heard about some of that today. But given this broad remit, can you tell us why the FA has taken a stance on sustainability and how you're implementing real change across such a wide spectrum?
Yeah, thanks, Susie. So Football Association England is a group of three companies. So we have the Football Association Limited, which is the core national governing body element. And then we also run two venues as well. So we have Wembley National Stadium Limited and the National Football Centre Limited, which is our high-performance base for our England teams at St George's Park in Staffordshire. So I joined the FA in 2017 to run procurement and took on sustainability in January last year. And I think when I took over sustainability, I probably found that there were pockets of excellence in what I'd call our venue operations, so at Wembley and St George's Park. But that focus didn't extend elsewhere. So we published in July last year our first group-wide sustainability strategy called Playing for the Future. And that was really with a sort of view of taking it into those divisions of the business where that wasn't that focus on environmental excellence. So whether that's our grassroots division or our technical director at our education division. And when we got the strategy signed off by the board last summer, the phrase that they used was they wanted sustainability to become a golden thread through everything that we do. And you know, but we're certainly not there yet. But why did the board, I suppose, feel emboldened to use that? And I think it comes back to a word that you actually used in your introduction, Susie. It's that they feel there's an urgency around this now. So, you know, whether it's viewing it as a sort of competitive differentiator in terms of sponsorship and partnership deals, which is, you know, something that Liverpool do a lot in, the increasing regulatory and legislative and sort of reporting burden that we face into, or just the fact that, you know, in England last season we had 150,000 grassroots football matches cancelled due to adverse weather conditions, and you know that's a situation that's only going to get worse due to climate change-induced weather events. So I think that urgency from the board and the strategy has enabled us to change the way that we procure, to, you know, make things sustainable by design, to do more staff engagement. And I think as well, it makes sustainability seem like less like something that's in the future. You know, you talk about targets that are in 2028, 2030, 2040, 2050. Actually, the impacts are being felt now. I was in Paris this summer at the Games, as I know some other people were here. I was reading an article in The Economist on the plane over yesterday, saying that the average daytime temperature in Paris in August was 2.7 degrees higher than it was 100 years ago in 1924 when Paris last hosted the Games. You know, that's an enormous impact. The impact is growing. I think sustainability in other industries and in other walks of life is relatively standard and widespread and uncontroversial now almost. You know, I checked into my hotel yesterday. It told me not to change my towels unless they had to be, said that all the food was locally sourced. It wouldn't let me switch on the aircon if the windows were open. Those are all sustainability things. We just, you know, experience them in our everyday life, and football should be at least caught up with that, if not leading.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, is it? It's that leadership position. And so, well, professional end of the game, obviously. The Premier League, most popular league in the world, I think you'd like to say. You might have some opposition around this audience, but why is the Premier League taking steps in that? And how important is it, you know, from what your role is in supporting clubs and what Rue's just said about their work with, you know, with the grassroots game to feed up to the Premier League?
Thanks, Susie, and thanks World Football Summit for having us here in Seville. We're very lucky at the Premier League. I think Premier League football is enjoyed in something like 900 million homes each season. So we have this phenomenal platform. And we also, as Rue's just articulated, we know that climate change is playing out in real time across the UK. 150,000 football matches cancelled a year. We know that 30% of football grounds in the UK will be underwater at some point by 2050 due to flooding. Is that right? 30%? Something like that, 27%. Like that. Yeah. So, look, we've got an incredible platform. We know that the issues are getting worse. So the Premier League has a very special opportunity and actually, frankly, a responsibility to talk about these topics, to use our platform, to try and ignite some widespread cultural change on these topics. And that isn't just the Premier League's responsibility, by the way. That's like the whole sports industry's responsibility, the whole cultural sector's responsibility. We are small emitters in the grand schemes. We're not concrete manufacturers. We're not airlines. We're not banks. We have a very small environmental impact in the grand scheme, something like 0.2% of UK industrial emissions, actually. But we've got this great platform, so we've got to use it. And that really is fundamentally why the Premier League is quite interested in this space and is willing to push the boundary a little bit, slowly but surely. What I would say as well, I guess, and Rue's already mentioned this, is that happily what's good for the environment generally is pretty good for business. So sustainability ultimately is about cutting waste, improving efficiency. So through these programs, we reduce costs. We get ahead of the legislative agenda. We're going to have to do this at some point, so we might as well do it off our own backs and do it really well. We can connect with fans, broadcasters. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but fundamentally it's about using that platform.
And you talk about your reach, 900 million homes. Is that what you said? 900
yes.
Million. And obviously, we're going to get to you, Paul, in a minute from one of the clubs. How are you as the Premier League? How do you see, like, obviously, the clubs, they have their own big audiences, they have their own identities, don't they? How are you going to help, or what are you looking to do to engage those clubs and get them on board?
It's a good question. What I'm noticing is that clubs don't really need the Premier League's help necessarily anymore. We've got 20 clubs in the competition. 10 are really making positive strides on sustainability now. Obviously, Liverpool. We'll hear from Paul today, and then Rishi again tomorrow. Man City are about to become, we think, energy self-sufficient pretty quickly. Even some of the less well-established Premier League clubs, Southampton, Wolves, have got really compelling programs in place. So the clubs are doing really good jobs. I'll throw them back. Our role in the Premier League is, I guess, to try and support collaborative approaches, to make sure there's consensus on issues of fundamental importance to everyone, like carbon accounting, the boring stuff. That's my job, the boring stuff. But that's really the role that Premier League's got to play.
But it's the data that will shift the needle, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
You know, you talk about number of games missed, you know, how many pitches are flooded and things, so that's the important thing.
Totally, yeah.
So, Paul, obviously, Liverpool Football Club, dear to my heart, top of the sustainability league table in the Premier League, but also recently named one of the most sustainable sports organisations, so not just club, by Front Office Sports. You've obviously got the Red Way. Can you just tell us a little bit about the Red Way and Liverpool's approach to sustainability and how that came about, and why the club wanted or felt it was that important to embrace sustainability? And it's obviously like the Red Way rather than a programme.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's really important. And the Red Way was launched in 2021, and it basically takes a holistic approach to sustainability and focuses on our people and our climate. And it's been a massive part of what we've done. And I think what it's done it's given us this kind of platform to suddenly start building from. Prior to that, I think we kind of tampered with it a little bit, but now we've got everybody is fully behind it. So anytime we now introduce any new products, any new processes, then the conversation literally comes to as well about the Redway and whether it's sustainable, whether we should do things differently, and it's really shifted the needle, and we're very proud of it. There's a lot of people who have put a lot of effort into this. Rishi, as you mentioned before, is speaking tomorrow, has been a driving force behind this, so we're really proud of what we've done. For me now, we're a global brand, and we want to try and push this a lot more and join the clubs up with the help from the Premier League and really try and see how we can. I think we've got a real purpose. We should all be buying into this, and we should all be trying to make a difference because society's changing so much, and it's vastly important.
Yeah, and that Redway pulled all of you. You were doing lots, and I think this is going to be the same for a lot of your clubs, isn't it? There's a lot of great stuff happening and going on in the space, but it was pulling all of those initiatives together under one umbrella that people could hopefully get behind.
Yeah, and it's I'm not going to lie, it's been a challenge, and we're on a journey. We've had moments. I mean, we at Liverpool, we have a situation where we don't have a lot of draft beer, so we have to sell plastic bottles. So back in 2021, we were probably collecting around 20-25% of these plastic bottles. Last year, we collected 90%, and we hit 1 million bottles that we've actually done. But those kind of things come from that kind of belief from the people that work at the club, that they can do this, but also it's about engaging with fans as well. When we first started to introduce this, there was a theory that let's just put the bins on the concourses and the fans will do what they're told. They didn't. It just didn't happen. So we had to go back to the drawing board and how big are the bins, where they're going to go, and it's all about the communications process. And as I say, now we've hit 1 million bottles and collected 90%. And that's just one small area, but it just shows that I think by having a strategy behind us and a belief that you can start to shift the dial and start to make some differences and do some good.
Yeah, and a lot of clubs may say, like, we don't have the same funding and resources as Liverpool, and we've got a really old stadium. Like Anfield is clearly it's part of the legacy of Liverpool, isn't it? I was talking to other Liverpool, they wouldn't mention your name. Club, they're building a new club. Obviously, Tottenham Hotspur have built a new stadium. It's amazing. It's very sustainable from that perspective. But have you overcome those challenges? Old facility, you're trying to expand.
Yeah, so some of you will know that we've got a mixture at the moment. So we've got the new main stand that was built in 2016 and the Anfield Road stand, which is probably a whole new panel as to that journey we've been on the last few years. But that's open now. So we do have facilities, and some of you who perhaps do go to older stadiums, they're not designed to deal with these things, whether it be waste collection, waste management. You've got to really think outside the box as to how you can make things happen. I think it comes back to that belief within the teams that they can make a difference, and how can we do this? Obviously, we look to our partners as well to support us in some of these areas, because why would we not? Because if they can help us make a difference, then they should. But it does create a challenge. But there are always, we find, some ways around it, whether it be use a different product, whether it be introduce a new process, whether it be to take your waste off-site to somewhere else to do something. There is usually a way, but I think it comes back to that whole point. And with us, with the Redway, we start talking about these things at the point when we introduce something, as opposed to introduce something and think, how can we fix it? And I think that's the bit we really need to start changing.
Yeah, and you've mentioned the reach, Will, and the you mentioned there as well, Paul, around taking, you can't put the bins out and expect you have to take the fan on the journey. Like, how important do you see that operational side and creating that kind of authentic platform, essentially, isn't it? And the right kind of messaging when people turn up at the stadium or, turn up at an event or something, to actually, they can engage with it and it's something they can take home. So you can actually shift behaviour change with the fan.
Yeah, it's hugely important. That communication piece to the fan as to what you're doing and why you're doing it, is massively important. And again, I think that comes to the teams at Liverpool, which have really bought into it. I know you know, Susie, but our grounds team have introduced an orchard now at the AXA training centre. We have wildflowers, we have bug hotels, we've got an allotment that's about the third the size of a football pitch, where we've got bees that are growing honey. So there's a swell of stuff that's changing. communicating that to the fans, I think, takes them on that journey as well, and it becomes part of your DNA almost. It becomes something we need to be part of, and that they should buy into as well. But that communication piece, if I'm honest, we probably should shout about it more, I think. But it's yeah, I think it's something we're definitely heading in the right direction. Just a little bit of a way to go, yeah.
And I think that's an important point, though, in this space, is like building up that confidence that you can talk about it, because it's very easy for people to, critique, or there's always some hole. But actually, if you take a holistic approach to sustainability, then you're going to be able to say, like, hey, hold on, we can't do everything. It's not going to be fixed tomorrow, but actually we're on this journey. And Rafael, moving to you, obviously working reforestation, in forestry, in trees, and offset projects. There's a little bit of controversy around offsets. It'd be interesting to hear about Bosquia and that side of it. You're sitting at that intersection of environment and sport. You provide a solution. Just tell us about your mission, how you see that conversation with offsetting and the work that the likes of Paul are doing at the club level, and how you are trying to get clubs and or fans engaged in your solutions and your projects.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, World Football Summit, for the invitation. I think we all agree here that sustainability needs a holistic approach. But when it comes to the end of the needs, meaning that you are not able to reduce enough your carbon footprint, with a lot of measures that you are sharing with the audience, you need to offset this carbon, ideally. And we are working in what is called nature-based solutions. There are some attempts to obtain a technology that is able to capture the carbon from the atmosphere. That would be great if you're able to do so, and if it's cost-effective. And you can install these capturing machines or whatever anywhere, right? In the meantime, the nature-based solutions are a clear alternative, and that implies planting trees or planting mangroves or the farming itself or the soil itself. They are capturing carbon. So it's perfectly valid. So in terms of how the market, if we can call it in this way, related with offsetting projects is evolving, you are right. Everything has to be with credibility, reliable projects. The funny thing here is we are missing a global standard, a global body that ensures that these projects are doing what is promising to the society, right? And it's in private hands. There are, don't get me wrong, there are good companies out there, such as Gold Standard, Social Carbon, Berra, independent private bodies certifying that the projects are doing in a proper way. I'm missing, and I foresee in the midterm, hopefully in Europe, there will be certain regulation, and at European level, we can have some kind of clear regulation about what is an offsetting project related with nature-based solution, in this case, planting tree. This is one clear need. And unfortunately, because of certain controversies related with some standards out there, this is damaging a little bit the industry, the movement. And we are seeing certain, removal, withdrawal of certain investment in the short term. But what is clear is that the demand, the overall demand, not only in this industry, but particularly in some other sectors, is huge. And I am always talking about what is called the voluntary carbon market. I'm not talking the companies that are obliged to remove carbon or to pay because they are contaminant. Some of them you mentioned before, no? We are talking about the voluntary carbon market, and the demand is expected to triple in the next 5 to 8 years. So I think the solution is there. We need to fine-tune the control coming from, ideally, official bodies, and in the midterm, we have to deal with what's going on and see how we evolve, no?
I'm going to pick up on the voluntary carbon market, and I'm going to segue to you, Will, as Premier League. So you, 3 organisations here have all signed Sport for Climate Action. That's obviously a voluntary. And I think the sport is taking that voluntary approach. The legislation will come. It will push sport, certainly, and it will catch, and it is already catching some of the larger, for example, you're having to report, you're caught under various reporting legislation and things. So how do you see the Premier League helping those clubs that maybe are further down the line into that? And how do you see an opportunity for collective action, for example, in the things like Rafael has talked about? Could there be a Premier League forest that all the clubs come to and come around?
Premier League forest, yeah, well,
sounds good.
There's something. Where do I start? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty mad, the range of organisations you've got in the Premier League. You've got listed companies, you've got companies like Liverpool that are essentially multinational corporations, and then you've got tiny businesses with balance sheets and 50 employees, at that sort of scale. So it's an incredible range of organisations, which makes it really difficult to develop a programme which everyone can sort of buy into. I guess the Premier League plays two roles. We can, what you might describe as raising the floor, so we can set minimum standards for clubs to meet, and there's certain clubs who are going miles over and above that already, but other clubs who need a bit of support just to stay ahead of the legislative agenda and to make sure that as a group of 20 high-profile organisations we're doing what we need to be doing on the topic in a timely manner, so we can raise the floor over time. But I guess we can also, to some extent, raise the ceiling as well, raise the ceiling of ambition. And I think the way to do that, and we're learning how to do it sort of on the job, because this is new to the Premier League and new to lots of clubs, but I think the way to do it is to understand how we can leverage the scale of 20 clubs to help deliver opportunities that clubs on their own wouldn't be able to access. And a great example that we'll probably think about more in the future is like collective procurement. It's really basic. But if clubs are going to buy solar panels, let's do it all together. So it's cheaper for clubs, you get access to better advice, you get the best equipment. So what we're trying to do through collective procurement is just make the business case as easy as possible to lower that barrier to entry. So that's the role the Premier League has to play, I guess. And the second part of your question was it on competition? Or on how clubs can work together?
That is a follow-up, isn't it? Can you create that collective action?
Okay,
Can sustainability be something that actually everybody gets behind, and there's that common goal for football, for all the clubs of the Premier League, for football wider, whether that's UK or globally, actually can get behind and say, or are they always in competition?
Well, there's people in this audience that are better placed to answer that question than me, a few campaign groups. But what I would say is that having worked in lots of different industries, you can never get away from the competitive advantage piece. So there's always a competitive advantage to be had by moving the furthest, the fastest on sustainability topics, and that exists in football. We can't ignore that. But there's loads of signs that clubs are willing to work really closely together. At the Premier League, we have a Premier League environmental commitment now. Clubs are having to do certain aspects of work, and part of that commitment is about collaboration. We have a sustainability working group to make sure clubs come together and share knowledge. Clubs present ideas at each meeting that we hold every other month. So yeah, there's loads of like really fertile ground for working together. And what you can't forget is that the biggest issues that we face, things like fan travel, can't be solved by one club in isolation. That requires like systemic interventions by government, and the only way we can achieve that is through collective action and a collective voice. It's not going to be enough for, a football club to go and speak to the government. We've got to do it as a collective.
Yeah, or even just the Premier League on its own.
Yeah, totally.
And so you have 20 clubs. How many clubs do you have, Ru, playing football in the UK? If we think about kind of that collective action, that sense of community, how do you see what is the FA doing in that role to really take that down to the grassroots level to help support those clubs to build sustainability? And they're the ones who are going to be most affected by climate change, have the least amount of money to deal with flooded pitches or frozen pitches or whatever it is. The Premier League clubs will be able to probably heat their pitches, hopefully with solar. But how do you see your role in that? You've got to filter down to many, many smaller clubs.
Yes, I suppose in terms of that collective action piece, one thing to probably draw attention to, conscious that not everyone in the audience would be, from the UK or wherever it is, we have Green Football Weekend in England, which has had 2 iterations so far, last year and this year. Obviously, our sustainability kind of focus goes throughout the season, but this is a sort of moment in time during the year where NGOs, leagues, clubs, venues, broadcasters, etc., can come together to talk a little bit about what they're doing. The theme this year was all around sort of food and nutrition. I can't reveal next year's theme because I'm pretty sure Genevieve's in the audience somewhere, still under wraps. But that's a kind of point in time to draw attention to all the work. We've also just signed our first sustainability-specific commercial partnership with E.ON, the utility company, which is specifically aimed around decarbonisation of grassroots facilities. And that's also something that we're exploring through our funding conditions of the Football Foundation as well, which is the sort of grassroots investment vehicle within the UK. And then as well, we, England, along with the rest of the UK and Ireland in 2028, are going to be the host of the next Men's Euros. So, we've seen a lot of the great work that Germany did this summer, specifically around the Climate Impact Fund that they use there. So there's precedent now for having sustainability as a sort of guiding principle of the tournament, and that's definitely something that we can look to build upon. But it doesn't always have to be a massive campaign or partnership or tournament. If you come to Wembley, you'll see recycling info on the bins, and you'll get carbon information on some of the menus. And we've given sustainable information to the tour guide so that when you do the tour, you get fed some of that info. It comes back to the golden thread piece, just trying to make everything a sustainability touch point.
Yeah. And Paul, just back to you, on a really operational perspective, Liverpool's made commitments, it's signed Sport for Climate Action as well. You're then tasked with achieving those reductions. That's obviously a big challenge, and you did mention, looking for innovative solutions. But how do you kind of go about that, and how is Liverpool taking a kind of step approach? Like, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but you're taking steps towards getting there first, that big reduction target, and then the net zero piece, which is 2030, 2040.
Yeah, so the Red Way kind of sets that out, and gives us something to aim for, and we're measuring it as well as we go along, which is really important to make sure that what we're doing is actually having an impact. So that whole piece, as I said earlier, around taking every single music for me.
Stop dancing now. I didn't tell you.
That's
I
not
didn't give you that
happening today.
Yeah.
So that whole piece around looking at what we do, and is there some way of doing this differently, and whether that be, and look, my role is very much functional in terms of operational, but looking at, is there some different way of doing what we do to make it more sustainable, and how do we bring not only our people within the club, but also the fans on that journey as well, and keep creating that cultural piece. There is that piece as well from a commercial perspective of working with innovative partnerships as well to see whether it's something they can support us on, because there are people out there that can do that and make sure that they're relevant. So we're forever looking at that piece as well. So it really is about looking at that bigger picture. We're really aware that we're on a global stage here, and I think it's really important that Liverpool Football Club is at the front of that and is trying to drive it forward as much as it possibly can.
Yeah. And Rafael, just back to you, how do you convince leadership? Because, Paul has managed to convince leadership to right, we're taking absolute account of that part of our emissions, and there is an offset piece of that journey. How do you go in and really convince leadership? You've got to say, actually, this is going to help you long term. I know you want to get that player. There's only a finite amount of money, isn't it? They're looking at pitch improvements or new players, but you're trying to get them to invest in something that they might not see as immediate risk or priority for them.
Yeah, that's the key one.
A loaded question.
The thing is that I love that you mentioned investment. We need to explain that this is an investment that you are putting in place today, but you will have like 4 or 5 different returns of investment. That's the argument that we used ideally with CEO in the organizations, right? The first one is related with your own employees. It's clear that 70% of the employees, at least they said that they prefer to join an organization where this sustainability criteria is in place. This is one potential reason. The second one has to be with regulatory. Yes, it's true. Now you are not forced to do this. It's a voluntary carbon market. But in the midterm, the regulatory is going to force you. Or do you really think that you will be the only industry out there with no obligations related with environmental sustainability and so on? No? Third one is related with financial. The cost, because you are going to be forced in the long term, the cost of investing now and the price per ton, let's put it in this way, will be like 10 times lower than in the one compared with 10 years' time. Okay? And last but not least, obviously, it has to be with communication, reputation, positioning. And this is a clear example here in Seville. There are 2 ways to approach this if you have to do the one offsetting project. You can go with the hat of the climate guy in the organization. I want to offset carbon, that's all. What's the cost of the project? And I'm not going to communicate. This is a cost line in the P&L. Or if you consider an investment to try to gather some others. That reminds me somehow the case of the Forever Green here movement in Betis, Real Betis here in Seville, how they gather other brands, other sponsors, creating alliances to support these efforts. Somehow it's like how Football Club Barcelona with UNICEF, no, the NGO, when they decided to be sponsoring UNICEF, they say no to millions of sponsors for being the main sponsor in the T-shirt, and luckily they were able to gather other brands out there because they wanted to be part of the same T-shirt with UNICEF. So if you are clever in the approach of how to use, don't get me wrong, use the benefits of investing in nature-based solution, you can have certain extra return of investment. That would be my argument.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think that collaborative approach with bringing partners together is really important, and there's a few good examples. So we've got about 5 minutes, a bit more than 5 minutes left. I'm going to ask each of you 2 questions. We're going to start with the first one, though. What do you see the most immediate, high-impact action that you could take in the next few months? And I'm going to start that end, Paul.
For me, I think it's sort of continuing a little bit, but working with the Premier League. I think that collaborative approach for me, I think, is the biggest thing now. You know, we're doing a lot of good work at Liverpool, but I know a lot of other people are as well. And I just think it's for me, it would be to share that knowledge as much as we possibly can, and also gain some as well. As I said at the start, we're on a journey. We've come across some challenges, but for me to harness this now and really move it forward, I think that for me would be the biggest thing.
Ours is develop a costed carbon reduction plan through to 2030. So our board are getting really interested in this now, starting to ask questions. It's going to require lots of supply chain engagement, speak to lots of sustainability people. They're complaining about relationships with procurement. They're both me, so I can't complain about that. But yeah, you know, we're going to be looking at cost of alternative fuels, sustainable aviation fuel, lower embedded carbon materials in capital projects, you know, degasifying facilities, electrifying them. That's the main thing for the next few months.
And share that. Would you share your findings of that? Because I know that's what a lot of the clubs are struggling with, to a degree, the principles of it.
Yes.
We can discuss later. Will?
Back to the point I made earlier about our platform. I think we've got something like 1.8 billion touch points across our channels. So we need to get way better, as do most of football, I think, in celebrating the successes that clubs have, celebrating the successes that our partners have. At the moment, if you Google football and sustainability, you get a whole run of bad news stories, and that isn't a fair representation of what's going on. So that's what we've got to do, and we can do that quite quickly.
Yeah. Communications is one of the things. And I think traditionally sustainability has probably been quite in the hands of like more sciencey type people, hasn't it? And we've got to be way better. And I've been told like you've got to talk fan language, and I don't really do fans, but I think that's great. Rafael.
From my side, trying to convince these guys, and also La Liga, Bundesliga, Calcio, whatever, or the federations, to create not only one forest, it will be not enough. Not because I'm ambitious and I want to invoice 20 different forests, because the fans, which is the key thing here, they want to have the forest. This is a very, this is quite phenomenon. They want to have the forest very, very close to where they live. This is a phenomenon that we identify clearly in any project, in each project. So potentially 20, 40, I don't know, forests in your country, because you are a great speaker, you are a platform, you are a speaker for society, for values, and I think sooner or later this value of sustainability will be key to try to mobilize funds.
Yeah, and that probably also answers the one collective action. You may have something else. Like, what's the one collective action that football, everybody here could take to keep football relevant and make sure that we future-proof the game and we retain a resilient game? What would be?
To me, it's about values. So if you are doing a lot of campaigns and helping, for example, with the racism and other things like that, no? Why don't you be the leaders, the industry leaders in this field? You are the much powerful industry, no doubt, in terms of communication and speaker and voice, and you are not taking this power.
Yeah.
Same question.
Collective action.
I think that I got excited about my job about 2 months ago when we had a new Labour government coming in. We've got a Prime Minister who loves football. We've got a net zero minister who loves football. All of a sudden, climate change is a massive topic of conversation in the UK. So if the football industry can learn how to work really well with government, we're at a real inflection point. So that's, I think, something we should definitely focus on.
Interesting. Roo?
Mine's a bit like Will's answer to the previous question. I think it's talking more publicly about it. You know, it might be a strategy. It might be releasing your carbon footprint. Might be doing a podcast. Might be sitting here and answering questions. I think, you know, there was a panel earlier that said that 80% of fans want their clubs to do more in the environment. You know, Professor Lorraine Whitmarsh is an environmental psychologist. Talks about this kind of pluralistic ignorance where you sort of think, oh, we care about sustainability, yeah, but most people don't, and it's just not true. And you know, the next generation even more so, and history won't judge us very kindly if we don't.
Yeah, for me, it's all about legacy. You know, I mean, we've got a massive history, and I just think we've got a duty, really, to the society, and we've got a massive influence, I think, within football to make a difference, and not just drive change within our stadiums or within our associations, but just attitudes in general, and I think that's really, really important for us to do.
Yeah. Thank you to all four of you. That was great. I loved it. What I really take away from that is the passion, and passion from each one of you in this space for the role of football, and that it's not just the five of us sitting on this panel. There is people everywhere who are passionate about it, and I think our role and the people here who are in this space, our role is to create that collective action, isn't it? To support each other, to create the business case to move this piece forward. And I think, you know, football's got that opportunity to lead. 900 million, it's a crazy platform. The impact is small, the platform is huge. You know, business as usual isn't an opportunity, is no longer an option. We've got to move that forward. You know, we will be judged, you've said that, we'll be judged on the decisions we make today. So I think the big question is whether we're ready to step up to what is essentially the biggest challenge of our time. I know there's a million like short-term, immediate issues that all of your organisations are dealing with, and this is something that we're pushing, but it is fundamentally one of the biggest challenges of our time, and we need football to be part of the solution and lead the way. So thank you all, thank you for coming. I hope it's been entertaining.